Shady grey market key reseller G2A found itself in the headlines earlier this week after a number of indie developers asked people to pirate their games rather than use G2A's marketplace. Citing the company's historic issues with credit card fraud and the financial cost that has for indie developers, smaller outfits like No More Robots, Vlambeer and Rage Squid said they'd prefer to see their games just torrented outright because at least then they wouldn't get hit with credit card chargebacks when fraudulent credit card purchases need to be refunded. G2A has faced criticism for years because of fraudulently obtained keys for games being sold on their site, and they've never been one to take criticism lightly, often adopting a flippant tone whenever it deigns to respond. Mike Rose of No More Robots has been leading the recent charge in a bid to get G2A to sort its own mess out, and he's been in a back and forth that has seen him ask people to sign a petition asking G2A to stop selling indie games on their market outright. G2A has published a lengthy defense of itself and its practices in response to the recent callouts. I read through it and it contains that characteristic dismissive tone that G2A is known for, as it attempts to minimize the problem by saying that, well, indie titles are not as popular on G2A as massive AAA titles. No shit, Sherlock. Around 1 million games are sold each month on G2A Marketplace. Statistically, only 8% of them are indie titles. That 8% figure is important, keep that in mind as we go on. As I say, it's a lengthy article, I'll provide a link to it in the description so you can enjoy it at your leisure, but they did helpfully provide a TLDR version, which I'll read now to give you a good overview of the arguments they've made in their favour. G2A is a marketplace that's all about making the prices for gamers as low as possible. G2A's business model is the same as any other big global marketplaces like Amazon or eBay, with all its ups and downs. And just like them, we always try to maximise the ups and minimise the downs.
And let's up those downs.
Not only because of the law, but also because the customers require certain standards and because the competition would beat us if we stayed behind. Out of all its marketplaces, G2A offers the best benefits for copyright owners. G2A Direct. Nobody else gives developers a percentage cut of all sales on their games sold by someone else. G2A, like most online businesses, uses automated marketing, so every product available on the marketplace can be shown based on what the user is interested in. If any developer suspects there are keys on the marketplace that shouldn't be there, there's a quick and easy way to report it. All it takes is to contact us. If any key was illegally obtained, we'll remove it, block the seller, and provide their personal data to the proper authorities. We are and always were open for discussion, but a real one, not empty accusations and catchy slogans. I do think G2A worse than piracy is a catchy slogan. G2A has claimed that it will pay 10 times the money proven to be lost on chargebacks as a result of illegally obtained keys sold on their site. It's such an inflated figure that what this really is G2A showing off that they don't think this is a real problem, that they're so confident the money lost isn't that big or that not that many people are really affected by it, so they can easily afford to pay 10 times the amount anyone loses. I read through the whole thing myself and they do a lot of deflecting in the article. A lot of it boils down to, well, other companies do this, so you can't really have a go at us. It also dismisses the concerns of indie developers as publicity stunts. We want to believe in the developers' clean motives, but we also know that if there was a real problem, the most obvious reaction to that problem would be trying to fix it. If you had a reason to believe your keys were illegally obtained and ended up on G2A, what would you do to solve the issue? Write to G2A and solve the problem together? Go to Twitter and write "fuck G2A"? Obviously point A, right? Well, not exactly. The developers who posted tweets over this past week haven't tried to solve the problem together with G2A. That's why we can assume the reason they wrote these posts was to gain media attention. Unfortunately for G2A, they were incredibly successful. Their tweets caused an avalanche of articles. Well, first and foremost, complaining about a business on Twitter and trying to solve a problem with a business are these days one and the same thing. In the age of social media, it's often quicker and more efficient to call a company G2A out on Twitter, because they seem far more likely to try and solve a problem in public than if you attempt to contact them directly. Plus, given how dismissive G2A has been about this whole situation, one's not led to believe that they will be all that helpful. More to the point, Mike Rose said that they're lying. He said G2A straight up lie in their lengthy defense of themselves. He said he did get in contact and he talked to them at length and he has receipts for that claim. He added, G2A do not care about the people who make games, no matter what spin they keep frothing out. Do not fall for it. Plenty of devs have tried to reason with them, but they are not to be reasoned with. Rose also dug into some of the stats that G2A provided in their article, and pointed out how even though G2A was trying to show those figures in defense of themselves, it nonetheless points to shady behavior. He said, Descenders has sold 226 copies on G2A, but one single person sold 45% of those. In fact, 85% of keys were sold by 3 people. So where the heck did they get so many cheap/free keys? How is that even possible? You can see that one guy selling 102 Steam keys on February 14th, 2018. At that point, the game was only available on Steam and was 10% in the launch sale. I remember seeing these keys on G2A for around $13 at the time. So how did this one person get 100 keys he could sell for $13? Clearly, these 100 keys are a red flag. All the other 1s, 2s appearing, fine, that'll always happen. 100 keys appearing from a single person, 3 people selling 85% of keys for a game on G2A? Come on now, these are clearly flaggable, yet G2A did nothing. So we mentioned earlier that G2A said only 8% of the sales they have come from indie titles. Mike Rose popped a petition up to change.org asking G2A to stop selling the indie games, stating, G2A, the online games reselling website, says that just 8% of games sold on their platform come from indie titles, while the other 92% come from the reselling of AAA titles. However, developers of indie titles make up the vast majority of people who make games. Meanwhile, G2A's platform hurts indie devs time and time again by allowing anyone to sell illegitimate keys for their games online with incredible ease and no ramifications or checks. There's obviously a facetious element to the petition, but if indie developers continue to feel the sting from G2A's behaviour, there's nonetheless a valid point being made. In response, G2A has used really weak defences on Twitter, like bargain basement level defences. Let's say that petition goes and G2A decides to stop selling any indie game. Nature abhors a vacuum. Sellers would move to the next platforms, there is like 20 of them, and then to eBay and other marketplaces. The whole "we'll keep doing it because if we stopped someone else would" is never a good defense. It never adequately defends your bullshit. Saying that you're fine with fucking someone over because better you than a third party it's just not a good look. It does not make you look as good as you think it makes you look. They doubled down on this with, do you think that if G2A would close down tomorrow, the problem would be non-existent within a month? Nice of them to admit that they're causing a problem, but again, saying you're going to continue being a problem just because someone else would be a problem if you stopped being a problem doesn't mean you're not causing a problem now, does it? G2A have now half-heartedly admitted that Mike Rose did get in contact with them in the past, but that's certainly not how they tried to present this before they were called out, and other developers have come forward to say that they've tried to work with G2A on this. They've tried to get in contact with them, and they've been ignored, which again is why people end up calling out companies on Twitter, because it's the only way that gets them to fucking respond. But for all of its verbiage and graphs and charts and numbers, G2A's arguments in defense of itself ultimately boil down to, look over there, another company does the same thing, and if we didn't do it, someone else would. G2A's attempt to improve its own image this week has simply not gone well. Dismissive, misleading, and easily called out, G2A is now reduced to making semi-sarcastic quips on Twitter, which is pretty much how they've ended up behaving in the past. Meanwhile, I think I'm gonna go sign that petition just because... I don't know, just because.